I'd love to welcome you to Master Your Life Beyond the Boardroom podcast, a place for ambitious individuals to capture proud moments on who they've become. It's a discussion that finds insights, the highs and the lows on where they have been at stages in their life. A safe space to share and openly talk about their journey. So if you're on a journey yourself and you're wanting to stretch, go further and farther than you've ever thought was possible, mastering your life is something that will connect you with your identity. I'm excited to be welcoming some very interesting guests to add value to your journey. For more information and to stay in the loop on what Master Your Life is all about and gain more value, head over to www.master-your-life.co.uk. Subscribe to my newsletter and stay in the loop. Let's get to it. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Master Your Life Beyond the Boardroom. I am your podcast host, Luke Beastall, and I have an international guest joining us today. His name is Chris Gosik. He is the founder, or should I say co-founder of a health and well-being coaching company. And his story, which we're going to delve into today, from previous episodes, we have a bit of a pre-chat before, and he was sharing some amazing stuff. And what he's actually built with his fiancée and soon-to-be wife is a company that happened by accident. So we're going to delve into that, go into sort of his backstory. He's an ex-professional baseball player as well. So there's going to be plenty of us to kind of talk about. And there was an illness that sort of turned his life around. And to be honest, this is what happened today with his passion has come from that story alone. He's got the belief in himself that from his own experience, he is super passionate about helping people achieve their own transformation, which I think, for me, obviously you guys know us. I'm very much into the health transformation space as well. So this is where we sort of marry up on this and got shared values. So without further ado, Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, Luke, appreciate you having me. It's great to be on. I've been listening and following you for a while now. So it's really an honor to be here today. Appreciate it.
No worries at all. And honestly, I think, just to give also the listeners a bit of an insight, obviously, we sort of connected through one of the guests, who was on recently, Chuck. So obviously he'd been through a bit of a journey and then we sort of connected. And do you know what? I thought when we chatted a little bit back and forth, I see what you're getting up to as well. And I thought, wow, this is really going to go somewhere. And I think this would be a really exciting conversation. Hence the reason we're here today.
Yeah. Shout out Chuck. Shout out my buddy Billy, Chuck's cousin. I've known Chuck for years and, obviously know his story and everything. And he's quite the inspiration, man. I mean, what he went through and what he's doing now to try to help other people, honestly, is just a real inspiration. Yeah. Shout out Chuck.
Yeah. Let's give him a bit of hype there. That's it's always good there. Love that, Chris. So just so the listeners can kind of, as they're tuning in very early into this episode, just give them a little bit of sort of, like background from what, where you've lived, where you've been, just a little bit of a backstory really, Chris.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. So I grew up right outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania here in the States. And I was a multi-sport athlete growing up, was always really into athletics and sports. Played football, baseball, and ice hockey growing up. Ultimately played, ice hockey and baseball in high school. And then went on, I was actually drafted out of high school. I didn't play professionally, but was drafted by my hometown team, the Philadelphia Phillies, out of high school, which was, a really cool moment. I'm sure we'll get into that. Great memory. But I went on to play Division I baseball. And actually towards the tail end of my Division I baseball career, I started having really bad GI issues. It was just like nauseous and would have blood in my stool and just like stomach cramps. And it was kind of just really nasty. Something that I was like pretty embarrassed about, right? I mean, it was starting to affect my play every day and getting ready for practices and games and like all that kind of stuff. And really kind of had no idea what it was. Went to the team trainers and doctors and everything. And they kind of just like, were like, oh, you have like colon they were calling it colon spasms and giving me medicine for it.
Right.
It was kind of bizarre. So fast forward a couple months, end up graduating college, didn't end up getting drafted again or playing. My dream of playing professional baseball kind of came to an end, screeching halt. I was sick. I was hurt. And looking back at it now, I was extremely unhealthy. Like there was I graduated college in 2013. And, back then there was really no nutrition education, or there wasn't YouTube, or social media wasn't as big. So learning about health and sports performance, it just wasn't as out there as it is today. We partied a lot off the field. I mean, we were, the big Division I baseball program in a small sports town in North Carolina. And, we had fun. We went out and we enjoyed ourselves. And that was kind of our, get away from the field, which is a great time. I don't regret any of it, but I wish, knowing that what I know now, I had been, made smarter, healthier decisions. So fast forward a couple months, and, I started my career, my working career off, and was just, I would wake up in the morning, I was like, I can't go to work today. And this is, I was just ex-Division I athlete. I was calling out of work sick and had no idea. So long story short, ended up going to my primary care, who sent me to a GI specialist and had all different kinds of testing done, endoscopy, colonoscopies, blood work, all this and that. Ultimately found out I had ulcerative colitis, got the call ulcerative colitis. And I was like, yeah, okay. I had never heard of that in my life. I had no clue what it was. Luckily at the time, my mom, she was always a beacon of health. My grandmother, her mother was a beacon of health. My mom, same thing, always kind of looking for the newest and greatest, and very, very health conscious. So she kind of started researching it, and she was very concerned. And me being, a dumb 23, 24-year-old kid, I was just like, all right, I just finished my college career. I want to go and now have fun. In the summers, we always played summer baseball. I never really got to enjoy as much, the college life. I mean, like I said, we had fun or whatever. There was always stipulations that, I had a career and I was trying to play professionally. So when I got done playing, we would rent beach houses with my buddies, and we would go out on the weekend. A 23, 24-year-old like to have fun. So I didn't really give my sickness and colon, GI issue much thought. Fast forward a couple of years now, it started getting worse and worse. And I was having, these really bad flare-ups for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. And they would knock me out for a week or two. I couldn't get out of bed some days. I was sick, starting to affect work or whatever. And I started doing decently well. I got into enterprise tech sales, was working at a couple big hardware and software companies. And I was on the road a lot. So I was constantly entertaining and games and concerts. And we had fun because that was part of our job, was taking clients out, taking partners out. And, so I was unhealthy. I still worked out every now and again, but I didn't take my health seriously. So long story short, I ended up waking up one day and was like, I can't live like this anymore. And I made a vow to myself that I need to cut the BS. I can't live my life like this. I'm going to live the healthiest version of my life that I can possibly live from this day forward. And it kind of just clicked. I started following guys at the time, that I really looked up to, guys like Nick Bear and Cameron Haynes, and all these guys kind of had backstories. They went through something hard in their life and overcame it. And I was like, I can do this. And I started to believe, and, got on a workout routine and started following a program, and ultimately hired a holistic doctor and a health coach and a nutrition coach, and, slowly started to piece everything together. And I ended up turning my life around. And, I've completely put my colitis in remission, no more steroids, no more medicine. It's been a complete 360 life change for me. And since then, I've gotten very passionate about helping other people get healthier, throughout this transformation that I've gone through. People have reached out from all different walks of life, people that I work with, family, friends, whoever, started asking me questions on how to get healthier and, different choices that they can make as far as nutrition and workout plans and the whole nine. Ultimately met my fiance, and she was also a dual Division I athlete, played soccer and lacrosse in college, and was really kind of making a name for herself in the competitive CrossFit world. She was also managing a gym locally as well. She wanted to make more of an impact and knew she had more to give outside of like just, working with the people that she was in the gym every day. Same kind of backstory as you. Like she was working, 8-10 hour days, up at 4:30 in the morning, working all day, trying to compete and train on top of it was kind of burning her out. So
Yeah.
when we met, we were both kind of in the same boat, and we're like, all right, how do we do this? So she started taking on one-to-one clients, like kind of on a digital basis online or whatever. And it slowly just kind of started to snowball. And, we created the training app. And, now we have kind of a premium program that we're taking people through complete transformations, whether they want to, lose 50 or 100 pounds or 20 pounds, or, they've never worked out a day in their life and they think they're healthy, but they want to start like putting on some muscle mass and, building muscle. We kind of have this premier like transformation offer now that we're working with a lot of our clients on, which has just been the coolest thing ever. And this is where we get the name. Our company name is VLT. And originally when we started this, we kind of had like a vault of knowledge. Maddie was a certified nutritionist and had our CSCS and exercise science degree. And we both obviously played high level athletics and spent a lot of time around professional athletes and Division I athletes. So we're like, oh, why don't we just call it VLT? Not really thinking anything of it. And, fast forward now, we're a year into this and we've grown quicker than we can keep up with. We started bringing on a couple new team members and everything, which is really cool that we're starting to grow a little team now. And it's been an absolute grind, but like super, super fulfilling. Every day is something new. Every day is a challenge. But at the end of the day, we got into this because, we wanted to be able to help as many people as we possibly could get healthier. And at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. And it's been like super, super fulfilling. That was a short little probably 10-minute rant about my backstory and kind of where we're at today.
Chris, listen, man, it wasn't a rant. It was really powerful, actually, because there's so much that, I mean, even when you was talking and I was like, gosh, I want to ask this question. I want to ask this question. I was like, where do I start now in terms of asking these questions? But I think what would be really cool first is I want to go to your health issue that you faced and battled with. And then we'll sort of like then head back into sort of this business that you're now evolving, because it's a nice little bit. When was the first, if you can remember, when was the first sign that you in your own mind started to, because you were doing this training, you was going towards this sort of like professional dream of yours, when you felt something wasn't right? When was that moment? How old was you?
Yeah.
What was it, in a training session? Was it at home?
Yeah. So it was my junior year, and I don't remember like the exact date or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
But
sure.
I started having these stomach issues my junior year of college. And in our program at the time, we played for a guy who came from a military family, and he was like very military. And I don't want to get into, the details on that. It's a story for another day, but it was a high, for me at least, a high stress. And I played, for hard coaches, I played for great coaches, bad coaches, whatever. This was definitely the most intense environment that I was in up to that point in my life. He kind of like took the break guys down approach. And in my case, like I never got built back up. Like by the time I graduated my senior year, I literally thought that I like sucked at baseball. And this is coming from a guy who was, one of the top recruits out of Pennsylvania in high school, like drafted, like we won, state championship. Like I was, team MVP my junior year, like broke a couple school records. Like, and I played in high school and now guys that are still, big names in the MLB. So at the time, I just assumed that this was like a stress kind of reaction or whatever my junior year, and started having like stomach issues. My senior year rolled around and same kind of thing. Like I thought that it was just, it was because it wasn't, I would have these like stomach thing and learning more about colitis and everything early on, it'll happen for like a couple days at a time where like you'll have, diarrhea and like not like to get too much into it, but like you'll have, I guess what you could almost say is like food poisoning, but like you're not like puking. It's like all, coming out the other end.
Yeah.
So I was just like, this is just something weird. And I would go to my, our team trainer. He would send me to the team doctor. Team doctor would send me to like student health. I would tell student health what was going on. They're like, oh yeah, like just, you're a college kid, whatever. Like it's colon spasms here. Take this medicine. They would give me some kind of anti-inflammatory, whatever. So towards like the tail end of my senior years, when it really started to be like, okay, like, something is not right here. Like I remember like after I graduated and kind of like the shock of like, all right, like I have to like go live my life now. Like I have no idea what I'm going to do. I ended up getting a job actually for the Philadelphia Flyers, which was really cool. We had a family friend at the time who was a president with the Flyers, and he hooked me up and got me this like really great accounting job with the Flyers, which I laugh about now. I ended up hating the job, but it was really cool. We got to play pickup hockey every morning down at the Wells Fargo Center where the Flyers play. Growing up playing hockey, it was like the coolest thing ever.
Nice.
I ended up leaving that job after 6 months because I was just not meant to like be in a cubicle crunching numbers every day. But when I started that job, I was obviously a fresh-faced kid out of college, and I was like calling out sick because I literally couldn't go into work. So, that's when I was like, I need to go see somebody about this. Like this is, becoming like dangerous almost. And that's when I started like going to my primary care, who was, started to send me to the GI specialist and got all the tests done. And then shortly, within a month or two, like they figured out like, all right, yeah, ulcerative colitis, which was kind of a tough pill to swallow. But again, also being like a 23-year-old, I was like, yeah, whatever, like just keep going on. I didn't really, give it like after they gave me the medicine, gave me steroids, and I started kind of feeling a little bit better. I was like, all right, go on with my life, whatever. And then, as I started getting older and kind of getting out of like the party scene, it was like, all right, I can't go on like this.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is really good, actually, what you said. So I'm just curious then, Chris, did it actually impact you negatively with regards to, when you was in your younger years? Because what I'm seeing is like, you kind of just, obviously you knew something was wrong, but you sort of like brushed it off again, I guess, and just kind of carried on with life. So I just wondered if it sort of ever affected you in any way that maybe you've not shared before.
No. I mean, it was to the point where I ended up getting into a pretty good career in tech consulting. Like, it was one of those things where I always had the mentality, like, never show anybody you're hurt, or they, never let an opponent know they get under your skin. I was always just like, all right, I'm going to like power my way through this. I'm not going to let anybody know what I'm going through, whatever. And I remember being scared to travel a lot for work and pretty much locally, all within like the tri-state, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey area, or quad state, if you want to say that. But I remember being like, all right, like if I wake up and I have to go out to central Pennsylvania today, it's a 2.5-hour drive, like I can't do that trip because I need to be near a bathroom. Or, if I book a trip, a guy's weekend, or I have to go to a friend's wedding or whatever, and I wake up that morning and my stomach isn't right, like I'm in trouble because I can't, there's no faking that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so I
sure.
would kind of just like let this, sickness or my flare-ups like run its course and make up all the different kinds of excuses as to why I couldn't do things, to not have to go and do them. But it like ultimately affected me. And then like the depression sets in, I'm inside for a couple of days at a time, laying in bed, like I don't want to see anybody. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't even want to go outside for a walk, like huddled over, like cramped up in like fetal position. And then you start thinking like, man, like I don't know how I can live my life like this. I can't be confident. One day I have a big job and I got to get up to give a speech. And that morning, like my stomach's like screwed up. Like I can't do that, So like that starts kind of playing mind games with me and everything. Ultimately, over the next couple of years, that's why I said I finally woke up one morning. It was like, I need to make a change. I gotta get to the bottom of this.
Yeah. So that's man is so like, I'm glad you shared that, because I was thinking to myself, obviously, we have that ego in a way. We're sort of like young, boisterous, sort of like, yeah, I'm sad. I'm no worries. I'm all good, man. I'm good. I'm fine. But actually under the surface, behind that sort of filter, that face, I couldn't imagine the pain you was going through, Chris. I mean, even I've had,
gut issues just with like ultra running, just sort of like running your body down through pure endurance. And you're talking actually, having a bit of an illness with it and being able to, I mean, just in terms of, I'm just interested, and I'm sure there'll be people listening in sort of like going, gosh, that must be really painful and stuff. What was sort of the game changer for you in terms of this process to help you sort of feel like yourself again and think, gosh, yeah, you feel like I've got my life back? Because you said that you was like, I don't even know how I'm going to live my life like this.
Yeah. So after I started working with like these different kind of specialists and it goes back to what we're doing today. Like I ended up spending a lot of money on working with health coaches, working with a nutritionist. I went and hired a holistic doctor, did every test under the sun that you could possibly do. Because, unfortunately, like I would go to my GI specialist and they were just like, here's steroids, here's medicine. Like you're going to be on this the rest of your life. Like you were in and out. There was no conversation about nutrition or like mindfulness practices or stress management or anything like that. So I attribute my health today to working with those coaches. They literally were a lifesaver for me. Once I started piecemealing like kind of all together and was, was getting different pieces of the puzzle and kind of start like honing everything in. One, I cut way back on alcohol. That was the best thing. And even today, like don't get me wrong, I love a good cocktail. I love, a good ice cold beer every once in a while, but I can count on two hands how many drinks I had last year. Special occasions, holidays, Maddie and I go out to, and my fiance Maddie and I go out to a nice dinner. Like I love bourbon. Like I love a good Manhattan, but like I'll have one. You know what I mean? So that was cutting back alcohol was a big game changer for me. And then, obviously learning the nutrition piece, that was huge, just about how to fuel your body the right way, certain foods that cause inflammation in the gut. That was huge. Exercising and, you get into mindfulness and stress management practices. And, I think those two are very, very closely connected, like exercise and stress management. I mean, before I would just go after I got done playing, college baseball, like I was kind of just burnt out on like exercise. Like we would have 5 a.m. lifts multiple days a week out of season. We were constantly doing stuff and, work like playing for a guy that was a ex-military, family, or his father was an ex-military guy. He was very like, you're going to do this, you're going to like it kind of guy. Our workouts were not enjoyed. It wasn't like we looked forward to like going to the gym. So I was kind of just like burnt out on the whole thing. So starting to follow an actual workout program where like I could sit down at the beginning of the week and go, all right, here are going to be my 4 or 5 workouts this week. I can go into my calendar. This is exactly the time that I'm going to do them. I started seeing like results because I was doing progressive overload and starting to slowly, I was doing the same exercises for weeks at a time and my body started to change a little bit, obviously with the right nutrition and everything else. And then ultimately it all comes back to like sleep is like the number one thing. So I started optimizing, if you want to call it that, how to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night. And, once I started sleeping better, I started waking up with more energy and, and piece together the exercise piece, the nutrition piece. And then ultimately the stress management piece, I really got into meditating and journaling and, kind of just like sitting in silence sometimes throughout the day, like, working at a kind of a high pace, like high pressure environment, in sales, like like I constantly felt the need to have to always be on and always be checking my phone and, Teams messages and Slack messages and, emails and calls and like, meetings. And I really like taught myself how to like kind of bring it back to zero. And ultimately like all kind of those 4 or 5 different pieces together, I think is when like I put them all together is when I really started feeling, change.
Yeah, this is actually really good though, what you're sharing, Chris, because obviously you can clearly tell from what you're sharing, you've got an understanding, which is important because it gives you clarity to know where to move forwards in terms of your journey. Because I find that, a lot of people maybe are looking everywhere, but sort of don't know where to start or don't know where to go because there's so much misinformation. There's so many different like conflicting things. I think for you though, obviously you had a health issue. It sort of got to the point where enough was enough. You decided to reach out for help, which is brilliant. The fact that you actually had multiple people in your corner that provided not only the education, but the accountability to where you had to like give them your element of trust to then just apply yourself and then see the growth, I think is fantastic. Because what I'm sort of hearing here is that it was absolutely running to the ground in sort of your baseball career. See, it's very intense anyway. I mean, any athlete nowadays, I mean, it's ridiculous how much they go through in day to day for that, like, I guess, vision of being a dream professional player, whatever that may be. And then that, like, once it's finished, it's like, it's kind of, you went from one extreme to the next. It's like that was then cut off. And then you went, oh, you know what? I'm just going to go and enjoy myself now because I've literally sacrificed my life. So that's like burning one end, sort of physically and mentally. And then like going to the other end, your gut's sort of like taking the damage. It's sort of like, God, Chris, give me a break. You're sort of like bam, 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 bam. And then I guess something just cracks and appears. I mean, I'm not saying that's sort of like the root cause, but would you say that amount of going from one intense period of your life to then flip it into another intense period, would you say that contributed to sort of like the gut stress?
Yeah, absolutely. You hear a lot of athletes talk about this, like when it's over, like it's almost like you don't want to believe it's over. I can remember like prior to when I graduated college to when I like finally started making this health transformation, the best times in my life were always revolved around sports and winning and being on a team and being a leader and being an athlete at the end of the day and treating your body like an athlete. When I got done playing in college, I was so burnt out because I was hurt. I was hurt constantly. Like we weren't eating the right way. We were like, we would have a weekend, series and my parents would come into town or like after a Friday night or Saturday night game, like we go have, a beer or two at dinner, like didn't even think about it. Knowing what I know now, it was like the worst possible thing that you could ever do. There was no like, all right, I'm going to get like a lean cut of steak and like a baked potato for dinner with some vegetables. Like we just like we literally ate whatever. And, being an 18, 19, 20-year-old, 21-year-old kid, like you could kind of get away with it, but like inside my body was like screaming. I was chronically inflamed. So I had a lot of soft tissue injuries. I blew my ankle out and doing a stupid practice drill my junior year. And that set me back couple months. Like I was always hurt and getting ready to practice and play every day was like a chore. I would have to get to the ballpark, an hour or two before practice just to like warm my body up and get treatment. And by the time that my senior season ended and, also then like being sick on top of it, I wanted like nothing to do with like sports. So like I like kind of checked out and was like, I'm just a washed up Division I athlete. Like I'm not an athlete anymore. You know what I mean? So I think that mentality of like, you're not an athlete anymore, like really affected my day-to-day life. And I was like, well, I don't need to treat myself like an athlete anymore. And like going out, and again, like, I don't regret it at all. Like some of my best memories with my, my high school friends. I went to a prep school here in Pennsylvania and all guys school. And like my friends from that school today are some of my closest best friends. And, we had a blast. Like those next couple of years were fun, between guys trips and bachelor parties and doing the beach houses in the summer. Like we would go bounce around Philly. Like we all moved down to Philly at one point. Like those couple of years were like some of the funnest years of my life, but my body was just like completely taking a toll. Like I was sick. And you can see there's pictures of me, from that time. Like I was out of shape. I was big. I was heavy. I was chronically inflamed. My face was, kind of inflamed. Like I look at pictures now and I'm like, man, how did you let yourself get like that? But right. I didn't know any better. I again, like social media had just started becoming a thing and YouTube had just started to become a thing. And like, I didn't know any better. I thought that was just what, normal, 20-year-old guys did. But yeah, looking back, like, I think like that transition from being an athlete to then being a just a normal person, like mentally, I let myself just completely check out. Right. And knowing what I know now, like as a 34-year-old, I turned 35 in a couple of weeks. Like I constantly have to remind myself, like, you're an athlete, like, treat your body like an athlete, good sleep, like fuel yourself the right way. And I think just mentally, like that has completely changed my whole perspective on everything that I do, from my business to, being a good partner, to being a good friend, growing my faith. Like I treat myself like an athlete. And I think that is, every person I think should have that like same mindset. Is like, you can't just be good in one area of life. Like, in my opinion, if you have a vase of roses and, you have 4 roses that are really nice, but like 1 or 2 are like dying and withered, it's not really that nice of a vase of roses. Right. So I try to like take every area of my life. It's like, okay, you're an athlete in all these areas, like prepare like it. And, the rest will take care of itself.
Yeah. And the right kind of athlete as well, Chris. Because you was an athlete. Really the athlete.
Yeah, I got away with it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I really like that sort of frame, because obviously, being an athlete is a good part of your identity, really, from what you shared. I can see the sort of passion behind that. But what you've done is you've reframed it. You've made that athlete sort of lifestyle, not what people would deem it as from it. Like, you're saying to people, like, look, I'm not this athlete where I'm like baseballing, training 10 times a day, whatever it may be, and doing all this. The version of athlete to me is this: sleep, stress management, which I think is really cool, man, by the way. I think that's a really good sort of piece that you shared there. And I think what I felt from you, though, Chris, just from what you shared, is I felt a lot of pain. Like, there was a lot of pain trapped inside of you there that sort of showed up. And then now you look back at it, like you say, you didn't know anything different then, because you were sort of in this different world. You now look upon reflection and go, damn, like, wow, I was out of shape, and what was going through my mind? What was I thinking, sort of thing, which is not a bad thing. Like you say, you don't regret any of it because you learned something from it. It's been a sort of like, again, a catalyst, to where you are today. So going through all of this, right, from your like athletic background to then going into sort of like boisterous hood, whatever you want to call it, with all your friends, having ball in your life, then sort of like getting this illness sorted out once and for all. Now moving into sort of the health and wellness space and now coaching others. What's been, if you could pick one thing that you would love to share with our audience, what's been the biggest thing you've learned about yourself?
For me, I mean, the dots always connect backwards, right? So when I was going through all this, I was like, probably anybody else, it's like, why me? I think that when you're in it, you're like, and I've gone through a lot of hardships in my life. And I, now that I'm getting older and kind of, really maturing, I think like I've come to realize that when I'm in hard times, I saw something the other day, and I think it was Alex Hormozy he said, hardships lead to hardness. And the way that I take that is like, when you're in something that's hard, like knowing that, okay, I'm going to look back 5 years from now and like really appreciate this time and almost be glad that I'm in it. I went through a really bad, actually, divorce a couple of years ago, which I don't want to get into, but it was a really hard time for me. I really, struggled, as anybody would. I got married, and it was just a not a great fit. And, I was not happy, and neither was she. So when I was going through that, I had saved on my phone, the background on my phone. And I said, what you're going through now will be somebody else's survival guide in the future. And then I had under it, like, I will not let this beat me. So, going through the colitis and, going through, not having the best baseball career and, not playing professionally. And then, going through this sickness and, wondering like, why me, and kind of getting through that sickness, and then, going through this divorce, knowing what I know now, like those things, going through those hard times. And even, the last year, like, has been crazy. I mean, between Maddie and I, we buried 3 of our grandparents last year too, within like back-to-back weeks.
Sorry.
So yeah, no, I appreciate that. And they lived incredible lives. I mean, they were all, late 80s. Like, if I make it to their age and as happy as they are, I'll be thrilled. But, just like going through these different hard things, like it really does. I think it hardens you from like, I know I can get through this. Like, it's hard right now. I just gotta, I gotta wake up and just kind of plow my way through this, and like, we'll appreciate the good times a lot more. It's like the saying, like, this too shall pass. If you can, and that's where like falling back to like your systems and my routine of like, I know I need to exercise. I know I need to meditate. doing the things that like I know are going to like release that depressive state in my mind, knowing what I know now, had I not gone through all those hardships in my life, like I never would have had the courage or the confidence to be like, I'm going to leave my tech consulting job to follow my passion and my dream of like starting my own business and like helping other people, with their health. Like I would have never have had the confidence to do that, but I got through all those hard times in my life and knew that I was like, okay, I can do this. You know what I mean? And like bet on yourself, believe in yourself. I think going through those hardships and being in them and like really being aware of like, man, this is like a really tough season of life right now. It just makes the good times like 10 times more sweeter. And I think going through doing hard things and going through those hard periods is what kind of builds you into who you are today.
I mean, that's brilliant. And I appreciate, by the way, Chris, what you shared in some of there, with like past life experience as well. Like you didn't have to put that out there. So I really appreciate that. And I know there'll be people listening in, like relating and resonating with this, definitely on a deeper level, because we've kind of like gone below the surface here. So when you was just to kind of give a bit more of a context on this, what helped you the most when going through these hardships in life? What was sort of your, like buzz feeling or sort of like escape, if you want to call it?
Yeah. I mean, for me, honestly, like I'm very lucky. I have a great support system. I mean, my parents are incredible people. My dad and I are best friends. My mom is just like an absolute stud. My brother I'm really tight with, and have some, I had mentioned, going to prep school, and some of my high school friends, like I have a pretty close like circle. Those guys and like my parents and my family, aunts and uncles and cousins and everything, like just absolute rock stars. And I think that's like super important, is you have to find a community, whether it is your parents or if it's friends, or you got to have people around you that are in your corner that are going to be in your corner, right? Like when I went through my divorce, like that was the hardest thing. No one in my family had ever got divorced before. And like, I don't even like talking about this thing, because I still kind of have like mixed emotions about it, like just, embarrassing. I feel like I let a lot of people down, but you really find out in those hard times, like who your tribe is.
Sure.
And my parents and my brother and, some of my friends that I have and my family, my aunts and uncles and cousins, like they just like through and through on my side, like pumping me up, and then like it kind of all comes full circle with those people in my life. Like I got through those times, and, now I'm telling you about it. And hopefully the conversation that we're having today may affect somebody, whether it's over where you are or in the States here. Like hopefully, what they would hear this and be like, man, if he can get through it, like I can get through it, So I think having a very close circle of people in your life that you really trust and are on your side, like that's the key to life.
Absolutely. That key to life, that having that support system, I think is fantastic, Chris. And if it isn't sort of people around you in a close proximity, it's just that there is people out there willing to listen, I think, and just hold that space for you, I think is massive. And do you know when you said earlier about, I love that quote on your phone, just repeat that again for us, that you had back in that hardship that you went through?
Yeah. I had, it was, what I'm going through now will be somebody else's survival guide. And then I had under it, I will not let this beat me. And that was just a reminder to me every day to be like, this is the story that I've read a couple things where it's like, you're the character in your own like life story movie.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
like I had, yeah. So like I had the mindset of like, all right, I'm just this character in my life right now. I'm going to get through this. And 10 years from now, I might talk to somebody that is going through the same thing, and I can kind of advise them on some stuff that I did that like got me through it. And to that point, you can't imagine the amount of people that have reached out. One, when I started telling my story about like my ulcerative colitis and everything, the amount of people that reached out and been like, hey man, I have ulcerative colitis and like I'm struggling, like, which has been so cool. And then the amount of people that have also reached out and been like, hey man, like I'm really struggling with my relationship right now, or like I'm a couple years into a marriage, or like, and advice that, I've given on like, hey, here's how I got myself through it. Which, when you're going through it, it sucks. Like, it's like, you're like, man, like, I don't know if if I'm going to get through this, but you get through it. And, ultimately you turn a negative into a positive. So yeah, that kind of was just a little reminder for me every day to be like, all right, I'm not going to let this win. I'm going to get through this.
Yeah, honestly, I wanted you to repeat that because I just thought it was brilliant. But do you know what you've actually created, Chris? You've created a thrival guide for people.
Yeah.
That's like, man, they ain't surviving, they're thriving. From your experience, you're getting them to feel great, man. And do you know what? As well, it's there was something that I read in a book. I'll tell you what it is, and guys who's listening, obviously in the entrepreneurship world, the business world, great book by Simon Squibb, What's Your Dream? And I'll tell you another book in a second as well, which is really good. Simon Squibb, What's Your Dream? He said in there, ownership conveys freedom. Right? So there's two parts of your life. You play victim, like roles, or you can play the owner. You was a victim, Chris, but you've obviously come into ownership in your life and look at the difference. Look at the sort of distinction of what your life looks like now, which, you kind of heard that, like, why me? Right? Why me? That's the victim. That's sort of that mindset. And then I'm in pain and not really doing much about it. But then you've gone ownership, responsibility. Right, I'm going to get a health coach. I'm going to have a nutritionist. I'm going to learn. I'm going to understand. And then, actually, do you know what? Through my own learning, I'm going to kind of bring people with us. I'm actually going to start teaching it back to others to help them on their journey. And that's brilliant. And just when you talked about characters in the life, there's another book that I read, which is brilliant, by Donald Miller. He's actually from the United States as well. It's called Hero on a Mission. So he talks about 4 characters we play in our life, which is the villain, the victim, the hero, and the guide. So like technically what we kind of do as like a coach or a business, we're kind of positioning the people we work with as a hero. We're making them feel a hero. So they make it feel important. Oh my gosh, somebody actually does give a shit about me, right? But we're sort of dying. But it's really good how he puts it together. And he actually does, I don't know why I've got into this, but I think it's really cool, man. He does like eulogy and some deep work, some sort of like personal goals, kind of taps into the actual, like what you said earlier about the multiple facets of life, like your areas when you talked about the VAR, we say VARs, I know you say vase. You pronounce it
vase? Vase. That might be a Philadelphia accent too, but
yeah, man. So what I'm talking about is like those 4 sort of, roses that I guess are red and the 2 that are dying. It's like, that could be like maybe your wealth, that could be your relationships, that could sort of be your friendships, different parts of your life, I guess, that he kind of puts that down, which I think is a really good way of sort of, because you say you put pen to paper a lot, so I just thought I'd touch on that. But just thought I'd share that, and anybody listening as well, it's something that's helped me, by the way, on sort of my personal journey. But just in terms of now then, obviously, you've gone through your own transformation. When did you sort of know in yourself, Chris, that it's like, do you know what? I feel great. I can't believe how much my life's transformed. I've got this feeling inside of me now that I want to be able to give back to others.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I started, like, I was in tech for 11 years, I want to say. I think it was about 11 years, 10, 11 years. I always, my dad was an entrepreneur. He was in the restaurant business for his whole career, and he's got a really, really good story that I'll can kind of get into a little bit. But started off in college. He played college sports, was a college baseball player, played football and baseball in college. And towards his senior year, same thing. He was just burnt out, and he said, "Screw it, I'm done." So him and his roommate was a national champion boxer in college, and so they said, "Screw it, we got to They did not come from my dad. Did not come from money at all. My grandfather, we always say, was the wealthiest guy in the world, but never made more than like $36,000 his entire life. He was a tool and die maker. Lived right outside of Philadelphia. So my dad grew up in a 5-bedroom row home a 2-bedroom row home in right outside of Philadelphia with 5 kids. They had 7 people in the house, and you go to the house today, and you're like, how the hell did you have 7 people in this house? Like 1 bathroom. So he put himself through college, and towards the senior year, him and his roommates started a hot dog stand in the little town of Westchester that we grew up in. So they started the hot dog stand, saved up enough money, bought a lunch truck. They did the lunch truck for a couple of years, ultimately saved up enough money to buy their first pub, and then ended up having 9 restaurants over the course of their career. They had banquet halls. They have a couple different like pretzel franchises. They were hustlers. Like they just always were doing something. And he just retired about a year ago. So I always kind of knew that like I wanted to eventually get over to start my own thing. And, you know, I mentioned to you before that my business partner and I, one of my best friends, we kind of have a little real estate business, rental properties that we run. But I knew that like tech for me wasn't going to be like my end all be all. Like, you know, I liked the job. I liked the people that I worked with. And, you know, we got to do a lot of cool things and everything as far as entertainment goes with games and concerts and dinners. And, you know, there was always something going on. But I knew that I wasn't like passionate about it. And I felt like there was just like a part of my life that was like missing. And I was like, man, like, am I going to do this forever? I feel that I could like give more back to the world or leave more of a legacy on the world or help people more than what I was doing. So as I started going through, you know, my transformation, like I said, people, you know, all of them started asking me questions about different stuff. And I started getting really passionate about learning about health because I knew how hard it was to like tell myself in my head, like, I need to make a change and then like go actually make the change. Right. You know, week one's easy, week two is easy, but you start getting into week 3, week 4, and then month 2, month 3, and doing the same thing over and over and over again, and going to the gym and doing the runs and, you know, eating the right way and cutting back the booze and like, you know, doing that. Like that's hard to do. And a lot of people, and I was guilty of it. Like you know, I would try to get myself going and I would go, you know, the gym for a couple of days and I'm like, ah, screw it. And I have a big weekend, you know, going out with friends. And then Monday and Tuesday's a wash. Right. And it was just like this like constant cycle of just like kind of being, you know, mediocre with like the things that I would commit to. Right. So I knew how hard that was to do, to make a change or to tell yourself that you need to make a change and then actually do it. And then 2, you know, working with all these different specialists, like I knew there was so much out there about health and different ways or different things that you could make changes in your lifestyle that like weren't that major changes, but it just took the education to know it, to be able to make those changes. And so I started becoming passionate about, you know, giving other people pointers and tips and, you know, advice or whatever on things that I was learning. And finally, I was like, man, like, I think I can, like, I like doing this. And I remember being in our last quarterly business review, we had our whole team in from all up and down the East Coast. We were in Atlantic City. And a couple of guys on my team who, you know, I wasn't like, I didn't see every day because they lived in different cities, but they would get up for their QBR. And like, you know, I noticed that they were like looking better and, you know, they like had like some pep in their step. And they're like, yeah, like I'm actually down 20 pounds. And I'm like, dude, that is like awesome. Like, hell yeah. Like that's hard to do. You know what I mean? And so like, it just kind of hit me and I was like, man, like I'm really passionate about like helping other people with this. So that's when, you know, I started having the conversation with Maddie and like, you know, we kind of started this VLT coaching business on the side and she ended up leaving her full-time job in April of last year. We started VLT in February of 2024. She was like, yeah, kind of doing it on the side of her day job. Left in April. She got it to the point where she couldn't do it part-time anymore. So she left to do it full-time. And then I was kind of moonlighting and just helping her in the background or whatever. And then we got it to the point where it was like, she's like, I can't do this by myself anymore. And I was like, all right, like it's now or never. You know, we didn't obviously, you know, we didn't have kids yet. So I was like, look, like if I'm going to do this, like I got to do it now because if you know, we end up having kids or family or whatever, like I'm going to be like trapped in this other, you know, in this tech world, which is not the end of the world, but I want to do something that I'm like passionate about. So I ended up leaving my job in July to run this, you know, to run VLT full time. So it's just been her and I the last, you know, year or so. And like I said, we just started bringing on some team members, which has been awesome. But yeah, it was kind of like probably last year where I was like, this is something that I seriously want to consider doing full time, I'd say.
That's amazing how you've sort of pieced that together as well, Chris. The fact that you'd been through, you know, unbelievable personal transformation. You sort of like gained the knowledge by investing in it. And then actually going, do you know what? There's a lot of actual gaps and scope here for me to teach this to others. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be overly sort of, you know, like,
and that's I spent I spent a ton of money on figuring all this out, like a lot of money and a lot of time. I mean, it wasn't just like 2 weeks where I was like, oh yeah, like I'm healthy. Like it was over the course of, 2 or 3 years where I started like piecing all this stuff together and spending the money to work with a lot of these coaches. And I was like, there's an easier way to do this. So we're now kind of like an all-inclusive. I mean, we do blood paneling. We do very, very customized meal plans. We meet you where you're at from a fitness perspective. If you haven't worked it out a day in your life, like it's a very, very white glove, like all-encompassing, accountability. We teach you about, sleep and hydration and, macronutrients and how to fuel your body the right way. Like it's an all-encompassing program that we have now, which, we're seeing just every person we work with is getting incredible results. And like, we're really proud of it. But we're doing it at a fraction of the cost of like what it would cost to like, do like piecemeal together yourself, basically.
Yeah. You're meeting people where they're at, you're making it accessible, but you're also opening their eyes up to actual education and sort of accountability that, you wanted at one point, but you kind of had to go the harder route of, going deeper into it to sort it out. But obviously it was different back then. But what you're doing from what you've shared, I think is phenomenal, especially the way that you kind of do it holistically as well. It's not sort of like, here's the plan, crack on. It's very, like you say, bespoke. Do you know how we said earlier? Because I'm sure, well, if you guys, we're getting to this episode, maybe you might remember me saying in the intro about the business sort of happened by accident.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, tell us about that then. Like what kind of happened there? What made it sort of just go to this stage to where it's at today? Because I think it's just amazing where it is right now as well.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey. I mean, we didn't, when we first like started doing that. Now it was something to where like I was traveling a lot for work and I was running all the time. And if we have kids, which we actually just, I think I was telling you before this, Luke, we actually just found out we were pregnant. So like on top of moving and starting a business, and we're getting married in June, we recently just found out we were pregnant, which is like, wow, this is like a lot going on at once, but we feel very blessed. Like we're fired up about it. And our families, obviously, they're like over the moon. They're so excited. So we're fired up. But, we wanted to, knowing what I knew in my tech career, I was like, if we have a kid, like I want to be around. Like my dad is, for as hard as he worked, and he was an absolute just like grinder. I don't ever, like growing up, I don't remember him like not being there. Like he coached every single one of my teams. Took me to every practice. Like he was always around. And that then like when we were little, like he'd put us to bed at 7, 8 o'clock, and he'd go into the restaurants, the bars, the pubs for, from 8 till 2 in the morning, and then wake up when we were ready to go to school. And like, so I never knew that he wasn't around. With me, like I was traveling a lot, and like, I was seeing some guys that were older than me and kind of the path that I was going down. And I was like, man, these guys are on the road all the time, and they're away from their families and they're away from their kids. So like, I don't want to do that. So we're like, how can we kind of start like an online digital, coaching / like training platform or community? And it kind of just like, Maddie was like, all right, like she had her CSCS, which is like one of the, I mean, you probably know the top certifications you can get. You have to get an exercise science degree, whatever. It took years for her to kind of go through the process to get that. And she was, she was already coaching. So she's like, all right, why don't we just like put this like app together? And I give her, all the credit in the world. Like without her, I don't think I'd be doing this. I mean, she had a graphic design minor as well, which is kind of ironic. Wow. It's like she has the fitness side, the athlete side, and then she also has the graphic design side. And now she has her nutrition certification, like level 1, level 2. Like she's a freaking rock star. So without her, like I will be the first one to say it. Like, I don't think I'd be doing this, or at least to this capacity or as quickly as we've grown this. But anyway, so yeah, exactly. So it she kind of started like taking on one-to-one clients, outside of the gym or whatever. And without even really like marketing it, I was just kind of word of mouth, a friend would tell a friend and friend, and people were reaching out to her. She's like, I can't like she was burning herself out. She's like, I can't do this anymore. Her calendar was packed from 7 in the morning till 7 o'clock at night with just client calls. And, it's like programming and, writing meal plans. And like, so she's like, I can't do this anymore. So we're like, all right, well, this is a good problem to have. At the end of the day, our clients are seeing results. Our clients are seeing results. So then, I started working with some people one-to-one and, again, started getting results. So we're like, all right, like, how do we turn this into like a real business now? And so that's when we created the training app where it's like, a one-to-many now. Like we have 3 different workout tracks that people can follow. There's an at home, there's an in gym, and then more of like a hybrid, like high interval training track. We drop, nutrition, like ebooks and guides and recipes in there like once a week now in the training app. So we're kind of, people are coming in, they're following the program. And then we also have like a community built around it where people can write questions in. They have full access to our coaching staff, which is really neat. And then we also do kind of the one-to-one side, the one-to-one coaching, our transformation program as well. So it kind of just like very quickly, we're like, all right, this is like way quicker than we thought it was going to grow. It started off as just like a side thing. And again, that's like, that's a good problem to have. It's like, this is growing very quick. Like we need to bring on people to help us. So just within the last, 6 months to a year, like we went from nothing to, making a little name for ourselves. And we're just like super pumped to see kind of like where, like now that we're actually building out a team and kind of have processes in place and trying to automate some of the back end, we have help. It's like, okay, we can like breathe again. But like, as you know, I mean, you run your own business, like there's no off days. Like there's no, like, even when you're off, you're not really off. Like you're still thinking about it, you're still getting emails and you got to keep like the needle, keep the ball moving forward, keep moving the needle. So it's just like that's the entrepreneurial journey, as you want to call it, right? It's like always something. But yeah, it kind of started off like we did not expect this even a little bit. We're super pumped about the progress that we've made, and just like can't wait to see where it goes.
Yeah, I love it though, Chris, just how you've put that together, and obviously the journey of yourself and Maddie, how you've kind of found each other's strengths and kind of put them together, and weaknesses and challenges. It's sort of, you can tell it's that collective effort. So if someone was listening in today and they sort of maybe got a great idea for a business, maybe they've had the idea for years on end and sort of never pursued it, or maybe it's just left on the table collecting dust, whatever it may be, what would your own experience being in employment, going through all that and then now coming into like say the entrepreneurship world, what, I don't want to say advice, but what, if you were sat across from them sort of having a coffee or something, what would you say to them?
I would say learn how to teach and learn how to write, and learn how to talk. I mean, in today's world, like obviously content is king, right? I was like very uncomfortable with like putting myself out there, but I've learned, obviously there's always people that are going to take shots from you or shots at you. And like, there's friends that I probably rubbed the wrong way, that they have one version of me in their head. And, I kind of turned into this, I wouldn't say turned into, but I've evolved as a person and, really grown. And I think, that probably rubs them the wrong way because, maybe they haven't, or they just have a different version of myself in their heads. But like, I would say, like, don't be afraid to be new at something. Like, you're going to fail. I mean, there's been, we've even with VLT, like I've wasted a lot of money on, working with different people or, putting money into something that I think was going to be a good idea. And you're just like, this like turned out to be nothing. But I would say to learn how to write and learn how to teach. Like if you're passionate about cars, or, I have a buddy that is really into like antique and older cars, and like he's starting to make a little name for himself on social media. He just, he's been on podcasts. He educates people on older cars, like other people that are into older cars, like they're all about it. If you're into wine or you're into pickleball, you can start like your own little community or start, getting people together, and like, you never know where that is going to go. Like, if you're into running, like you can start, getting your name out there and start educating people on, different tips of running marathons, or, to how to fuel before a race, or like, there's so many things that you can learn about in any subject that you're into. And that's what I did. Like I, was into health, and, got certified to be a wellness coach, and, got certified to be a nutritionist, and, kind of spent the time and money to do that. And like, I haven't done it as much yet because we're trying to do a million different things at one time. But like, I plan to, over the next couple of months, like really start like helping educate people on, health and everything revolved around nutrition and fitness and, kind of being like a wellness, thought leader, maybe, if you want to call it that. But you can't be afraid to be vulnerable. At the end of the day, like, I always fall in this trap of like, oh, what's he going to think? Or what's she going to think? Or you can't think like that. Alex Hormozy talks about it. I love quoting Alex Hormozy, talking about Hormozy, because I think he's just like super insightful for what he's built, what he's done. But, he talks about it all the time. He's like, the person that you're worried about, it's kind of morbid, but he's like, the person that you're worried about that like you may thinks a certain way about you, he's like, they could be dead tomorrow. And he's like, then at that point, you're like, oh God, like, why didn't I do this thing for the last 3 years? Because I was worried about, Joe's opinion. You know what I mean? So like, you can't be afraid to just like put yourself out there. And most of the time, the people that are like, I've had some friends, take jabs at me or whatever. And like, not like jabs, but like off back-ended comments or whatever here and there, kind of making fun of my, transformation and what I'm doing now. But like, the people that are like 2 or 3 steps ahead of me that I've worked with that are mentors, like they've never once had ever said anything about like, dude, what are you doing? Or like, why'd you do this? Or like, you know what I mean? Like they are like your biggest cheerleaders almost. So for me, like I would say, don't be afraid to be new at something, learn how to write, learn how to speak, and follow like what you're passionate about. Like I worked in tech for, 11 years out of college. Had a massive career in tech, and just started kind of doing this on the side. That you do have to work at it, but like for me, it doesn't feel like work. Even I say today, I'm like, the last couple of years or the last year or so has been stressful with like thinking about making this move and then finally making the move, and now we're in it, and like we're 6 months into a new business, and like it is stressful, but like it's a different kind of stress. We know that we're building the foundation of our life and what people that we want to be around and people that we want to influence, and like kind of our little community, which is really cool. So you just have to like make the decision in your head, like, all right, I'm going to do this and I'm really into it. And you really just never know where it's going to go. Like I think for a lot of people, it would pay off, even if it starts out as just like a side thing and like a passion project. For us, it was a passion project. Like it was something fun that we did on the side. And now like, look at where we are today. It's like actually like evolved into like a pretty cool business. So just got to go for it.
Yeah, I mean, that's so good. The kind of 4 sort of like little steps there, the wisdom that you shared, Chris. And I think so many people will probably, they'll be nodding their head, go, I know. But I think it is that sort of courage. It's that sort of, I think what you said there about, backhanded comments and people probably judging you and saying certain things because they see that one version of you. They're not seeing this like updated or evolved version, like you say. I think is a big thing that I've heard kind of come up a lot, on this podcast with guests that I've spoken to. It's sort of like you've got to just sort of, I think like a roadblock or a barrier in the mind. It's as soon as you kind of push past through that, you sort of just stop showing up, and this passion that you've got becomes a project rather than this passion just being in your own head and nowhere else, and just maybe with theories. So that's really good. But we're actually coming towards the end of the episode, Chris, which, it's mad, man. So much good stuff.
Goes quick.
It does. It really does, especially when it's like I say, this sort of like casual conversation. But it's a question I love to ask every guest. I'd love to hear your sort of perspective on it. So, yeah, Chris, what does mastering your life mean to you?
Man, do we have another hour?
Yeah, literally.
What does mastering my life mean to me? I think it goes back to what I talked about, Al. For me, like, I want to be a stud in every area of my life. Like, it's not just business. It's not just, I want to be a good partner. And, the greats talk about this. Like, you read about Michael Jordan and Kobe and, different high level elite athletes and, big entrepreneurs. And like, what does that all mean? But like, I think, you're in your own business. Like, growing a big business is hard work. For a lot of people and a lot of these guys you hear about, like, they came from nothing, especially like a lot of the athletes, like they came from nothing. MJ didn't come from much. Kobe didn't come from much. Tom Brady, like all those guys didn't come from much. And I think that they all talk about, like, you can't just be like a good athlete. for me, it's like I'm trying to be a good, fiance and like future husband. I'm trying to be a good son to my parents and have an incredible relationship with them, and to my brother, having a good supportive like friendship, with him, to all my friends. I want to be a leader, both in business and in life, and being a good role model for people that, maybe are 5-10 years behind me, somebody that they can look up to say, well, like, he didn't really like, I really didn't come from much. I mean, we didn't come from money. Like my dad, to this day, I don't know how he put me through, my prep school. Like we didn't like, growing up, I mean, we lived, we were middle class, like upper middle class. But like we didn't, my dad came from nothing. So I think, being an example of like, you can be anything that you want to be. I mean, you hear so many stories of people that, came from nothing and have made, complete, like they're like legends. Yeah, so I think mastering your life to me is like being good in every area, being a good business guy that people want to work with and want to partner with, being a great partner, being a great son, constantly trying to get better and like having a growth mindset of like not being closed off and had just like little vision of the world or like my little opinions. Like I love talking to different people with all different, political backgrounds and, different religions and races. And like, I love just learning different new perspectives. I've kind of gotten over like the part of my life where I'm just like, oh, I believe this and this is the way. Like, I love reading books, I love like watching YouTube, and I love listening to the podcasts and just trying to learn, as much as I can, just from a new perspective, learning new perspectives. So I think for mastering your life, for me, that's what that means. It's just trying to be a stud in every area of your life that means something to you.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And do you know what? That actually is so good because it concludes everything that we've actually been talking about today, for sort of connect the dots, the all-encompassing, the inclusive facets of life, sort of wanting to take care of not just 4 out of 6, actually wanting to really focus on as many areas as you can to keep them intact and health and well-being and all that, being a thought-provoking leader. I just love that. Look, Chris, I mean, I've absolutely loved this episode. I really have. I think the listeners are going to take so much away from it. Now, if they wanted to connect with you and sort of like maybe shoot you a message or drop you a follow, where can they find you? What's the best platform?
Yeah, so I'm primarily most active on LinkedIn and Instagram. Instagram, obviously, Chris Gosik on Instagram, and then my LinkedIn is just Chris Gosik, my name. And we're starting to get a couple, all the other of the platforms rocking and rolling, but I think I'm most active on Instagram.
Fantastic. Well, I'll ensure that they do drop into the show notes so people, if they decide after all, want to connect with you, man, they will 100% do that. Well, look, final thing from me. Thank you so much for spending time with us on this episode. It's been a good one.
Yeah, Luke, this is a pleasure, man. I love, you invite me and have me on and everything. And hopefully we'll get to do this again in the future. I'll have to come over and visit one day. That'd be fun.
Yeah, definitely, man. It's been a pleasure having you on as well.
Thank you so much for tuning in on this episode. If you found this useful and it's provided value to you, if you don't mind, go onto my channel, tap follow, and keep in the loop for more podcast episodes like this. And if you want to go one step further, please leave us a positive review. It would mean the world to us, and it would help spread the message to many more people. And also, if you want to go that one step further again, tag us on socials, drop us a message. I will always respond. Look forward to seeing you on the next one.